Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Travel Group's Expedition Cruise Series. I'm Cindy Horton, and I'm here to represent all of the consultants and the management of the Travel Group. And first off, we want to thank you for your support and your loyalty, both during the pandemic and more particularly through the last 6 months as we've all been navigating the return to travel. Oh my goodness. But it's time to look forward now, and we are incredibly excited to follow the growth of expedition cruising. We think it's a great fit for a lot of our clients. The options really are endless, and there's something for everybody who's looking for a deeper, more immersive experience to some new locations and on beautiful, beautiful small ships. That's why we've put this series of Zooms together, highlighting 4 different lines, and each of them are going to talk to us about how their line differentiates themselves and offers something truly unique. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Charles Dunwoody, who we know as Chaz. Chaz is our business development manager with Silversea, and he comes from a long line of cruisers. His grandfather worked for over 50 years in the cruise business, beginning in the French line, and his father also another 35 years. His dad spent 15 years with Holland America Line before he finally retired out. Chaz grew up learning cruises from the inside out because he spent all of his holidays at sea. So his passion runs very deep, and we're delighted to welcome him. So I'm going to turn you over to Chaz Dunwoody.
Awesome, Cindy. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. And it was a great starting with my family lineage. I actually called my dad today, and we had to kind of break it down. And he didn't want me to let everyone forget that my mom actually worked for British Airways for about 10 years as well, and from the 70s and 80s. And they actually met each other at a bowling tournament in Dublin, Ireland. Long story. Anyways, thanks everyone so much for joining us here this evening. My name's Chaz Dunwoody. I'm our Senior Director of Key Accounts for Silversea. And I'm really, really thrilled to talk to you guys about the amazing world of expedition cruising. And I think it's great what Cindy and Kathy has put together here, just because every single week, if you guys come to all 4 presentations, you'll see the biggest differences between expedition cruising. But the biggest part of expedition cruising is really these amazing experiences you can only do with the vessel, just because a lot of these places like Antarctica and the Galapagos and remote islands in the Pacific can only be accessed with an infrastructure you create yourself. So that's inherently what an expedition cruise is about. And I'd like to show this video, this picture to start. I have a bet with Cindy that whoever does this quicker buys each other dinner. So hopefully we either get to the Antarctic first or the Arctic second. You have this amazing opportunity to do the polar plunge, where you're then met with a nice glass of a warm libation of sorts when you get back on the ship. But I like to start off with this amazing video to show the full depth of expedition cruising and where you can truly go. Whoops. Sorry, so no sound. Sorry about that. Thank you, Cindy, for pointing that out.
The world is full of opportunities. We just have to go out and take them.
Well, sorry about that, guys. So I love starting with that video just because all of the destinations and all the imagery that were shot during that film and that short little vignette were all taken on a Silversea cruise. So it shows you the level of expedition you can have globally, just because, well, a lot of people, when you think expedition, think of off the beaten path, really rugged landscapes and really kind of intense itineraries, you can have those absolutely, but also you can scale those back and have much more of a cultural experience with a lot of Aboriginal tribes and flora, fauna, or even a soft expedition, which is focused on culinary or wine. But Silversea is the original luxury expedition cruise line. And I think the phrase is imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery, which you'll be now seeing moving forward with expedition, with how many expedition luxury lines are out there. When we started this in 2008, people thought we were crazy, just because when you thought expedition, it was rugged icebreakers going down to the Antarctic, or off the beaten path, little rigid boats going to the Galapagos. Now you can do expedition pretty much anywhere in the world in the comfort of a Silversea ship. And we're the original luxury cruise line as well. And our biggest claim to fame is destination. Silversea visits over 900 individual ports of call every year. The next closest competitor in cruising goes to about 365. So we clearly have a huge advantage in terms of our depth of destination as well. And we're totally all inclusive. So it's a great way to look at an expedition cruise, just because getting some of these places is extremely challenging. So we have now made it a one-stop shop for you to make sure you're getting to this amazing destinations all over the world, and you do it in an amazingly comfortable atmosphere. So Silversea, like I mentioned, is a luxury cruise line at heart. So we started in 1994 with one ship. If any of you remember Sitmar Cruises, Sitmar was sold to P&O, and P&O then reinvested the money the sellers of Sitmar reinvested the earnings from that and started Silversea Cruises in 1994. We entered the expedition space in 2008. Now we have 5 expedition ships in our fleet, with a fleet of 7 classic ships as well. And every single time you step foot on a Silversea ship, it looks like this. Cindy and I had the pleasure of sailing with each other on the Silver Moon to the Baltics this year. And this is the exact suite category that is the entry level on every single one of our ships. So it really is an amazing, comfortable atmosphere as well. And then there's amazingly personalized service on board. So everything is included on board Silversea ships, including butler service from the entry-level suite all the way to the top suite on board. And like as Cindy mentioned, I have a long history of cruising in my background, but I had my most amazing service experience in the Galapagos, actually. I took the morning off with my traveling partner, and we ordered room service, and our butler brought up a juicer and juiced oranges in our room and made mimosas fresh for us that way. That's the additional experience you get with a butler, where they really kind of think and foresee things that you would never think of to ask for or even to experience, just because those are the little things you can always remember about a Silversea trip, including just having an amazing one-stop shop as well too. So our door-to-door service is offered from every major gateway in Canada, from Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal. So Silversea starts your journey on your cruise at your home. We actually pick you up in black car service and bring you to your international gateway. We then include economy airfare on sailings. We have amazing business class upgrades. For example, looking at Europe for 2022, 23, 24, and 25, business class is only $19.98 round trip Canadian for the entire trip as well. So that's also offered in the Arctic, Antarctic, and most of our expedition destinations as well. Once you get to the ship, your room key is simply that. All you need to do is take it in and out of your pocket to get in and out of your suite. You're not worrying about picking up gratuities, Wi-Fi packages, shore excursions, food, and all your alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverage are included. So it's really the cost and the price of the trip are the exact same. So that's one of the things that really is a huge, huge asset with the Silversea trip, where you don't have to come home with that big credit card bill or worrying about, oh, should I take this excursion to this amazing destination? Just because everything is included in that cost for you. From there, on your expedition destinations, all your gear is included as well too. So I think a lot of us living where we do live have expedition style desk gear. But the reason we have all the stuff meet you, like your parka and your waterproof pants and your boots and your poles, is these ecosystems are so fragile that we want to make sure that all of the gear that is used is completely sterilized. So you're not bringing any foreign contaminants in. So that the gear meets you at the ship. Then you get to come home with an amazing Silversea parka that retails for about $1,000 US as well. So that's overall what's included with the Silversea package. But getting to the nuts and bolts of the expedition style, who goes on expedition? It's really a unique aspect now because expedition cruising and luxury cruising are the two fastest growing parts of the travel industry. And luxury is now not seen as buying Rolls-Royce cars or buying multiple watches or etc. Luxury is about collecting experiences now. And expedition and luxury, kind of pairing that together, is an amazing coupling of how luxury is now presented in a North American market as well. But getting down to kind of who are those travelers who historically have traveled on expedition, off the beaten path, highly educated adventure seekers, multi-gen families, wildlife enthusiasts, land and river cruise clients. So secondly, if you look at your lifestyle and if you're active, if you like to go hiking, if you go up to Whistler in the winter time, that is an expedition style kind of trip. So that inherently kind of springboards you into what an expedition cruise can be like. The biggest question I then get is, what is the activity level like on an expedition cruise? And I mentioned before, lots of people, when they think expedition, long hikes, rugged sweating, really being completely exhausted by the end of the trip. And you can do that 100%. You can go on a 3-mile hike in the morning. You can then take a shorter walk. You can then go snorkeling in the afternoon and have 3 expedition style landings that way. Or you can go ZODIAC cruising, or you can have more of a cultural experience, or you can kind of go on a beachcombing walk or a ZODIAC cruise to get the same level of experience, just kind of in a different setting. So I say that expedition isn't a demographic, it's a psychographic. It's people who have a zest for life, who have a yearn for learning and looking at new cultures, flora, fauna, and wildlife as well. So I mentioned that we have 6 total ships in our classic lineup right now and 5 total ships on our expedition lineup. But we strive to always innovate. And Silversea became part of the Royal Caribbean group in January of 2020. And speaking frankly, thank God this happened, because I'm not sure if we would be here if that was the case. And Royal Caribbean has given us about $500 million to reinvest into our product and to build new ships as well. I know that we were supposed to be focusing entirely on expedition, but it would behoove me if I didn't mention our new builds on our classic side of our fleet. So the Silver Nova is joining our fleet in July of 2023. Biggest ship Silversea's ever come out with, 728 guests, 55,000 tons. But the reason it's built this way, it's the first hybrid cruise ship ever. So this ship is built all off of battery power, liquid nitrogen gas, and battery charge. So it represents a 40% emission reduction in greenhouse gases, 25% more efficient in the water. And for all of us who live in a port city, particularly Vancouver, Seattle, where you see ships at Canada Place Pier with the billowing smokestacks that come out when they're in port, we actually will plug this ship into the electrical grid, and the ship goes carbon neutral in port. So we're opening up new destinations. And when they announced this on our sales conference about a year and a half ago, I stood up and I said, "Oh my God, you made a ship for my people." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Who in this room knows how to compost and does it regularly?" So anyways, it's a really great way to give back and a really great way to have a new message in luxury, where we're the only cruise line in this sector who's doing something of this nature. But getting into where we're separating ourselves on a platform and expedition is our new builds, is how we've really revolutionized expedition cruising to give a luxury element. And that's really gone to the nth extent with our new addition, the Silversea Endeavor. If any of you were past Crystal guests, yes, this is the Crystal Endeavor. We purchased her in June of this year. This ship they spent $550 million building this ship. It has 200 guests, 200 crew members, 27 expedition guides, and 27 Zodiacs. So the biggest thing that I would recommend if you're looking in expedition cruising for the first time, look and see how many expedition guides and how many Zodiacs are on board, because you want to speak with these amazingly well-educated and unique people. Just because when I went on my first expedition cruise, Kit Van Wagner was the head expedition leader, who has a double PhD from Harvard, who scuba dives in Antarctica. So it's ridiculous the stuff you get to talk to these people about. And then the more Zodiacs you have, the more small your groups are. So the more interaction you have with these amazing people. So Silversea Endeavor will start in Antarctica in November of this year for her inaugural sailing, make her way up to the Arctic, go Northwest Passage, come down through Vancouver, through Seattle, through bend back to Antarctica in a full year span. But with this ship, I want to remind you, everyone, this is an expedition ship. This is exactly what you would get on a build of this nature. If they have 2 different pool decks, amazing explorers lounge. So on an expedition ship, it's different in terms of the structure of the cruise. If none of you have done an expedition cruise before, you have a landing in the morning and the afternoon. You're back on the ship around 4 o'clock. For the Europeans, they have high tea, but the North Americans, we like to have happy hour from 4 to 5. From 5 to 6, you then have your lecture recap. So what you do is go to this room right here, where the head expedition leader and the expedition team speak about what you saw that day, what you learned, what you was highlighted. Then it lists the activities for the next day. So you don't sign up for shore excursions you actually do it as you go. So it's a true adventure where you actually were looking to see what you're doing the next few days, rather than kind of structuring your day so rudimentarily like you would with a previous cruise. It's just a little bit of a kind of a yin and yang aspect that way. So if any of you are a little bit of a control freak, we can get you the full itinerary when you get on the ship, but it has a little bit of an element that way moving forward. But with Silver Endeavor, it has unprecedented comfort and luxury and even more extreme destinations. And this is what your accommodations look like on board. I mentioned before, all your Silversea trips are going to have very similar accommodations. All suites on board. 93% of our rooms have balconies. Every single one of our suites has a walk-in closet. Most of which have a bathtub as well too. But then there's different levels of suite on our ship. So there's the entry-level suite on Silver Endeavor is about 380 square feet. The top suite on board, the owner's suite, is about 1,600 square feet. So it's about 3 times the size of my apartment. So I always get a little overwhelmed when I go on board. But it's pretty amazing the level of accommodation you have on an expedition ship, where it's just extremely comfortable and well thought out as you go. Look at this amazing bathroom here. As you go through and kind of become best friends with penguins, you come and get relaxed back in this before your amazing dinner on board too. Unrivaled service, choice, and comfort. There's 4 or 5 different restaurants on board. There's 6 different bars and restaurants, but you have more time in port with this ship, just because it's the first time we've had a PC6 ice strengthened hull. What that means is we can go through about 6 feet of loose ice like this. So Northern Greenland, Pond Inlet, Northwest Passage really are now in a full scope of this ship, just because it's one of those places that we really can now highlight as well. So that kind of goes over a little bit of our new hardware. Looking at destination, I wanted to start with Antarctica, a place that's close to my heart. I'll be visiting in January as well.
Adaptability and flexibility are key elements of expedition cruising. We don't have such a set itinerary as such. We're not guaranteed to go to a particular place. It all depends on weather conditions. I work closely with the captain on this, looking at forecasts for the upcoming days and how it will affect our itinerary, whether certain areas need to be avoided, whether we need to look at plan B, C, D, and also down in the Antarctic then on ice charts, whether ice comes into play or not as well. I keep coming back to Antarctica, I suppose, because of the rewards that it gives us. It creates huge challenges, to operate down here, and you never know exactly how it's going to work out, but it always does. You always get this amazing experience at the end of the day, and to see just the reaction of the guests that we have down here, see just how much fun and enjoyment they're having the whole time. It's just incredible.
So kicking off our Antarctica voyages, Silversea has 4 different itineraries that does Antarctica. So as I mentioned, with the all-inclusive product, what we did to make it even simpler for you to get down to the continent of Antarctica is we have our included air that flies you into Santiago. You would have an overnight in Santiago, and then you have charter flights either to Punta Arenas or to Puerto Williams, Chile. A lot of my colleagues who are going to come on, who'll be presenting next, we'll talk about leaving from Ushuaia. The reason that we have moved our operation to Puerto Williams for the 10 and 12 day and 18-day sailings out of Ushuaia is there's 32 new expedition ships coming into the marketplace in the next 2 years. So in addition to the about 35 that are there right now, there are only 4 berths in Ushuaia total, where in Puerto Williams and Punta Arenas, we're the only operator that sails out of there, period. So like I mentioned, if you have the thoughts of going to this destination, go now, just because it's going to get crowded and we don't know what's going to happen. But for any of you who are strapped on time or really have thought about doing Antarctica, where you might have a fear of motion, we have this program called the Antarctica Bridge, where you then fly to Punta Arenas. You then take a business class flight and land on the continent of Antarctica and have the same time in the peninsula that you would have on a 10 or 12 day trip. So this also can get you there and home in about 12 days. And rather than taking 3 weeks off, it's about 2 weeks as well too. Showing the flight, getting down here. We have these amazingly newly retrofitted aircraft to landing on a landing strip at King George Island, then boarding Silver Endeavor. This is Silver Explorer. This is kind of the inception of Silversea Expeditions. You see how the change has happened. So that's Antarctica Bridge. The 10-day and 12-day packages are the standard Antarctica lengths that you would have on an Antarctica trip. So you fly down to Puerto Williams. Sorry, that says Ushuaia here. This is incorrect. You then have 2 days across the Drake Passage, 6 days in the peninsula, and 2 days back. The biggest advantages with Silversea is our ships go upwards of 24 to 26 knots. So of our competitors, only 2 other brands go this quickly. So the reason I bring this up is if there's weather in the Drake Passage, which is known for being a little rough at times, we can sit back in the Cove of Puerto Williams, let the weather go by, and then go faster down, rather than kind of putting you into harm's way to then kind of get moved around through the Drake Passage that way. But if you have the time, the ultimate trip to Antarctica is the one on the far right, the 18-day, which includes South Georgia and the Falkland Islands, just because you have amazing experiences like this. So the king penguins in Salisbury Plain. The next picture has 500,000 pairs of breeding penguins. It's an amazing destination. So you can tell this is actually the 3rd week of January, because these brown little fuzzy guys right here are 4-week-old penguins. They molt all their feathers off by the end of March when they go through migration season as well. So it's an amazing experience where people ask, what's the best time to go? And Silversea only goes at their peak season, which is December, January, and February. December, it's much more serene. You have much more migratory birds. Whales are moving into their breeding areas. In the last week of December, the penguins are born. So then by February, you're seeing kind of all of the penguins kind of coming to life and moving around that way. So it's an amazing destination overall. There's different levels of activity, and really there's not a bad time to go. Getting up close and personal with the wildlife. I really like showing that video previously as well, because our Zodiacs in the background right here can actually accommodate 22 guests on board. Our average guest count on a Zodiac in the Antarctic is 7.3 people. So and there's an expedition guide and a Zodiac driver on that too. So there's 2 crew members for 7 people. So it's an amazing level of experience as well. We also include kayaking. So what we do here is during the 2 days down or the flight down, we actually have a raffle where they pull out your names for everybody, because not everybody wants to snorkel, because you can have, kayak. You can have 16 people kayak at a time, 2 landed a day. So 32 people times 6 days, about 180 people can kayak. So we do a safety video. And when you get in the water, we put you in a dry suit. And we actually make you do a full roll in the water first to make sure you're okay getting wet. No, we don't make you do that. That would not be good. Sorry, I have to. But it's an amazing experience, once in a lifetime thing to go to the Antarctic that way. But the expedition destination that really launched my love of this product was in the Galapagos. So Silver Origin was our first purposely built ship that was built under the tutelage of Royal Caribbean. So we built this in a river cruise shipyard and launched it in June of 2020. Silversea came out with 3 ships in 2020. It was a fantastic idea, dealing with pandemics that way. But going to the Galapagos is an amazingly unique experience. There's nothing like it. The reason for that is, given this wildlife habitat has been protected for 500 years, the animals are not scared of you whatsoever. Also, to be a guide here, you have to be a native Galapagos, and about 90% of them are 2nd and 3rd generation. So the passion that they have for this product really comes through, and it's really amazing overall. There's 2 itineraries in this destination, the North Central and the Western. And the only differences here is the North Central has a more highlight of birds, where you see all 3 booby species. The Western, you snorkel with sea lions, penguins, and turtles, and you're guaranteed to do that. During COVID, we actually worked with the Galapagos National Park to guarantee that we see all 3 booby species, and you snorkel with all the big 3 sea lions, penguins, and turtles on both sets of our island chains. No other cruise line can offer this, just because we have unique rights to these itineraries as well too. So you don't have to worry about, I'm going to see this there and I'll see this here.
Galapagos is unique because this is one of the few places on Earth where you're actually accepted as part of their environment. These species are not running away or flying away. In certain cases, they're coming up to you. And that makes this place truly unique. Something that surprises many people is the diversity of Galapagos. Not only the terrain, which is distinct from one island to the next, but also the diversity of life. We have a unique diversity. In areas where you have reptiles such as sea turtles swimming next to penguins, there's nowhere else on Earth that you have that combination. Being a naturalist on the Silver Galapagos is not only fascinating for me because of this environment that we're traveling through, but also meeting our guests that are coming in here and seeing Galapagos through their eyes, and the excitement of being able to interact with the species here. It's very personal. There's no other place like Galapagos on Earth.
So I always get the question, when is the best time to go? Because the Galapagos is the only year-round product that Silversea has, and it sells out every single trip we have because there's so much demand for this. And this is our amazing vessel. This is the biggest game changer that Silversea had pretty much since we went into expedition. So we built this ship it accommodates 100 guests. It has 90 crew members and 10 expedition guides. It's a 1-to-1 exact crew to guest ratio. 100% verandas on board, and it can accommodate 600 passengers, and we only put 100 on the ship. So it's an amazing platform to start your trip. As I mentioned, all of our landings are done via ZODIAC. You board the ship via ZODIAC. So when you have your charter, so basically with Galapagos 2, similar to Antarctica, you fly to Quito, have 2 nights pre the JW Marriott, transfers, breakfast, and tours are included. You have a flight out to the Galapagos that Saturday morning. Make sure you wear pants or shorts on that flight, just because my traveling partner wore a short dress. She got out of ZODIAC. I got in trouble because I didn't know about the dress code. Then when we got on the ship, it was much better. Anyway, so with that being said, getting on the ship, you board via ZODIAC, and you board like this. So big question I get a lot is, can you show how this works? And the short answer is yes. So this is my friend Rachel. She's our senior director of field sales now. And this is how you get onto a ZODIAC. You pass your gear over. There's going to be 2 people on the top part and 1 in the ZODIAC. You get kicked by your friend to go. You then use the safety grip like this. Take 1-2 steps down, sit on the pontoon, and scoot your way over. That's the nth extent of getting onto a ZODIAC. So it really is an amazingly easy experience, which really kind of seems pretty terrifying. And the only big thing that you need to be able to do is pick yourself up out of a chair. And that's the only kind of basically physical strenuous activity that's required to get onto a ZODIAC. Then when you get onto our ship, you have this amazing platform, base camp, coming up to our 70-foot interactive video wall. We do pre-lectures here, where you meet your expedition guide before you go to shore. This is an example of you're going to see Galapagos penguins. You then are whisked away that way. There's 2 full-service restaurants on expedition. And I wanted to bring up dress code. People ask, what do I wear? when I go on these destinations. Be comfortable. Wear what you would at home. This is dressed up for This is dressed up for expedition. Basically, as long as you're not wearing shorts and flip-flops in the dining room at night, you'll be okay. So no worries that way. The restaurant and the food on our ships is incredible. We have the highest food spend on board. When we started this program back in 2008, we really struggled with our food just because we were a European-based company where we didn't know how to source for this, because you have to source from either Chile, Ecuador, or Argentina. Chile or Ecuador or a period to get your food here, or your Peru, excuse me. So we actually found a 2-star Michelin chef whose wife is a 2-star, who's a master som from this area, who they completely redid the menu to source everything locally. The Explorers Lounge, I mentioned, this is where you have your lecture recap. So unique thing with this destination and this room is these individual pods have a TV that comes up, so you don't have to battle your way around seeing around people. Really well thought out that way too. This is kind of a different view of that. So finding the best seats is not an imperative thing where you have to be right up front to hear the lecture series. Get involved that way. The grill is where we have hot rocks at night. We actually have a unique aspect of our outdoor dining where in the evening we heat up a lava stone and bring it to your table setting where you cook your food yourself outside. So in Galapagos, you'll have snapper, mahi-mahi, lobster tails, all local seafood, filet mignons as well too. And this is what our suites look like. All verandas on board. Smallest suite on board is 320 square feet. And then really an amazing experience that way too. So activities you have in Galapagos is kayaking, ZODIAC cruising, a short walk, a longer hike, and then snorkeling as well. And you always be led by a guide, just because it's so controlled by the national park that there's only 100 people allowed that are landing at a certain destination at a time. So the 100 people from the Silver Origin will be at one landing area. Then in the afternoon, we move from 11 to 1 p.m. We want you out of the sun because the UV rays are a little strong. The temperatures are not as intense as people would imagine. The highest it gets in the Galapagos is about 85 degrees, but the water temperature is what fluctuates a lot. So in June through December is the dry season. The wet season is January through May. And when I say wet season, it's kind of like South Florida, where it rains at 4 o'clock once every day. So it's much more lush and a little bit more humid, but that's all you really have to worry about. Amazing experiences. You have a photo studio on board every single one of our ships. This is my personal picture. When I went down there, I bought a big fancy DSLR camera. The first 3 days, my pictures were awful. And then I took a photo class and we actually learned about lighting, framing and such that way. So there's actually photography landings that you can take advantage of as well. But I really recommend getting in the water as much as possible. I snorkeled 11 times in 7 days. This is my colleague Rachel again. Like I mentioned, the wildlife is not scared of you whatsoever. I had 2 10-foot manta rays underneath me for 15 minutes. I had a baby sea lion pull my mask off, boot me on the face, pull one of my fins off, a pod of penguins swimming around me in a circle in about a 15-minute span. Then on the second to last day, you will always go to the Thalassourina breeding center for the giant tortoises on both sets of islands as well too. But I wanted to kind of share a few other really unique destinations within the last 5 minutes I have left here, guys. So in the South Pacific, we have unique aspects of going to Papua New Guinea. This actually is the 3rd most popular expedition destination in the world. The reason for this is it's such a unique and remote island chain that it's still relatively untouched by a lot of these areas. There's 1,000 different dialects spoken in Papua New Guinea, highlighted by the mudmen, the fire dancers, and so on and so forth that way. Going to Vanuatu for Champagne Beach. If anybody wants to look up where bungee jumping came from, we go to the land diving festival in Vanuatu where the vines get stretchy, and whoever gets close to the ground is the chief of that village. So you can imagine pretty much what happens. This is the Ram dance in Vanuatu. I mentioned kind of with the cultural aspect as well too. South Pacific, as I mentioned, when you think about this, you think of Fiji, Tonga, Cook Islands, and French Polynesia. We go in October. The reason for that, the snorkeling is amazing, and it's humpback whale migration season. So you can actually snorkel with humpback whales from an amazing destination like a Silversea ship. This is my #1 destination I want to go to right now. We go to the Kimberleys in Australia. And how I describe this is it's extremely remote. And when I talked to Kit about this, the lady who scuba dives in the Antarctic, it's imagine the Grand Canyon and it's just drained out and it then fills halfway back up and drains out again, just because it's known for horizontal waterfalls where there's 30 to 60 foot tidal changes and crocodiles and Aboriginal artwork and these amazing canyons and these amazing areas. It's in Northwest Australia. So yes, it is a little bit of a challenge to get to, but I mentioned with the all-inclusivity, it's an amazing destination to think about here too. This is my number 2. I apply for this trip every year and I still have not been approved to do this. So Maputo to Mahe, going to Mozambique, Madagascar, Tanzania, and the Seychelles. Aldabra Atoll, this one right down here, similar to the Kimberley, there's a 30-foot tidal change in this atoll in the Seychelles, which actually has more giant tortoises on it than the Galapagos combined as well. So extremely unique. You can actually do an overland safari from Mozambique up to Zanzibar and then meet the ship back and do that as well. But I would be remiss without talking about the Arctic. It's one of the destinations that's super unique and really, really popular for expedition. Where in the Antarctic, you know where the animals are. This is similar to a safari where you have to go find the narwhals. You have to go find the walruses and polar bears and such. So all of these have a charter flight included, either from Reykjavik or Oslo as well. So just depending where you're going. This is kind of where you would go from Oslo to Tromsø up to Longyearbyen and Svalbard to go to go searching for polar bears as well. And this kind of is what it's all about, going about 80 degrees north. The polar bear right here, this is my friend Rachel's picture. They followed him along the beach for about an hour. Then he took a nap as well. So one thing with expedition, I mentioned there's no timing of this. This actually was about 6:30 in the morning where they just dropped the ZODIAC, said, hey, we found a polar bear. Anybody wants to jump out, let's do this. Go to the misty fjords here as well. But we also now with Silver Endeavor have the PC6 ice class, which can get you to the Canadian high Arctic, which is very unique for us. Where going from Churchill, Manitoba, you'll take a charter flight from Winnipeg up there. We have 2 nights pre-set up for you to go see the polar bears at Churchill. You then go over to Kangerlussuaq, where you take a charter flight to Reykjavik. So getting to these destinations is not entirely too difficult, but it's amazingly unique what you can do in these destinations. Then going to Pond Inlet as well here too. This is the high Arctic and off of Greenland. Highlighting here, Beachy Island is where they found Franklin's ship as well. Then when you go into Pond Inlet right there, it's where beluga whales actually bubble fish. So you have a unique aspect to see this. It's amazingly unique. Only pretty much happens in that destination. Then ending in Pond Inlet, where there's only a population of 1,800, where a gallon of milk costs $12. So it's amazing the level of cultural experience you can have on these expeditions. But in a true Silversea fashion, given we have world cruises, given we have everything out there, if you want to take a one-way trip from Vancouver to the Arctic, we have you covered. So you can take an 82-day trip that combines the Arctic, Canadian high Arctic, Northwest Passage, all the way down through the Aleutian Islands, coming down into Vancouver as well. One-way flight, guys, 82 days. Who could say no to that? I know it's just great. And then if you're looking for the ultimate expedition trip, we have a pole-to-pole trip that does the Antarctic, Amazon, West Africa, up through the British Isles, round trip circumnavigation of Iceland, up through the Arctic as well. So, as I mentioned, we truly have something for everybody. And lastly, we have an amazing South Pacific for 75 days here too. Easter Island, Papua New Guinea, South Pacific, all the way down to Perth as well. These longer voyages have included business class air, other amenities that are built in here as well too, given they are called grand voyages for us. Lastly, what I wanted to kind of mention, I've traveled on Silversea myself by my solo. It's really a great opportunity because Cindy can attest to this. It's extremely social on board. We only source about 55% of our guests from North America. Given it's a luxury platform, everybody has the same level of service from the entry level all the way to the top as well too. But sometimes as solo travelers, you get dinged with a 200% solo supplement. But we have about 90 sailings at a time that offer a solo supplement of 125% and less. About 40 of them have 110% solo supplement. So one great thing is working with a travel agency and travel advisors like the Travel Group. You cannot book a Silversea trip online. you have to work with a travel advisor, and it's such a unique aspect, especially working in expedition, that you want to work with one of these experts as well. And as a thank you, we wanted to give you a perk in the next 2 weeks. If anybody does want to book a trip with us, you save an additional $600 per suite. We do sell in Canadian dollars at an exchange of $1.25 as well. Anyways, guys, does anybody have any questions? Cindy, Kathy, any questions?
I think everybody's just completely gobsmacked. It's pretty hard not to get goosebumps when you go through some of those itineraries, that's for sure. And I think it gave us a really good recap. I know that Silverseas produces a very interesting price comparison grid, which we will send out to everybody so that you can sort of see how they fit in terms of the pricing. I think you'll be surprised at how reasonable it is when you compare it to some of the other lines that don't include an awful lot. So we'll get that out to everybody that came tonight. And I don't see any questions. Kathy, do you see anything?
No, I didn't, but I have a question. Chaz, for the Galapagos, if do you always snorkel off the ship, or do you do any snorkeling off the beach?
It's a good question, Kathy. So basically how it works with our snorkeling program is you build your way up. So we start with, the first day is at Bartolome, so it's all hiking. The second day you go to the beach and you actually walk your way out. And then the second day you'll have a ladder off of a ZODIAC to jump off. So you actually go beginner, intermediate, advanced, and then by the end of the trip, you actually go to an island chain where there's a rip current that goes right up in a figure 8, where you get put in the rip current, where you get pulled around the island chain that way. So they'll tell you this to say, hey, are you comfortable with this? Are you comfortable with that? They will never put you outside your comfort zone as well. So the beginner snorkeling is at the beginning of the trip. It's really something to think about. And you can always talk to the expedition guides about what's the best opportunity for me to see the wildlife and my comfortability.
And is the wet season the best time for snorkeling?
Not really. So it depends. So one thing with Galapagos, it's truly ever changing as an ecosystem. So we actually have a great 12-month highlight guide of the animal life. So when I went, it was November, which is sea lion pup season. So basically the sea lions are born in August. So in November, they're 2. So they're kind of rustling teenagers. So I talked to my expedition driver. I'm like, how do I get their attention? Because they're so active and wild. He's like, just act like a kid in the water. And I'm just zipping around, spinning, and one of them zips in front of my face, and then he comes like this and just boops me on the face and starts jumping over me. So there's not a better time for snorkeling. The only thing that I would recommend is the Humboldt Current from Antarctica runs quicker from September through December. So that actually brings more nutrients to the water, which then can activate some sea life. But other than that, there's not a bad time to go. Like I said, you're guaranteed to snorkel with sea lions, penguins, and turtles on all 52-week trips we have.
Thank you. Cindy, do you have your hand up?
No, I'm sorry. I was just checking for questions. Okay. So I think looks as though we don't have any other questions for you, Chaz. So thank you so much for your time tonight. I know that you're incredibly busy. You can imagine all of these business development people in the travel industry now are working 24/7 as things kind of ramp up. So we really appreciate you taking the time. And I personally can't wait to get on one of your expedition trips.
Absolutely. So it's always my pleasure speaking with everybody. And so let's see. So Esther just asked, how physically active do you have to be? I want to make sure we get to that one. Esther, it depends on what you want to do. So in the Galapagos, I had a couple who were in their 80s who went ZODIAC cruising the whole time, where they didn't go on hikes, they didn't go on walks, they kind of did it at their leisure. So like I said, as long as you can pick yourself up out of a chair and you're comfortable walking up a few stairs, you're fully ready to go on an expedition cruise.
I'm ready.
There you go.
Absolutely. So anyways, guys, it's been my pleasure. Cindy and Kathy, thank you so much for putting this all together. If any of you do have any questions, I'm happy to personally reach out to any of you. So it's more like, as you can tell, I'm slightly passionate about this. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Chaz. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will send a follow-up, and we hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.